We may be aware that the earth we live in is the only habitation for living beings in this universe. But are we also aware that this is the only natural heritage passed on from generation to generation, and that our future generation will be left with this lovely environment in the condition that we live it in? The status of the environment in which our descendants will live in is directly connected to our generation's activities, which may be directly and indirectly linked to the environment. Thus, it is our duty and responsibility to conserve and protect the environment we live in by being aware of our activities and the issues that affect it. A lot of people do not understand the importance of caring for the environment where we not only live, but also the reason we survive. But many of us take advantage of the environment, as it has never crossed our minds that most of the resources from nature needs conservation for the environment to continue to sustain our existence.
We have been spending increasing amounts of money when it comes to response to these hazards. What it then implies is that if we are getting more resources going into the disaster response mechanisms, as the case is, it means that we are moving money or resources away from development programs to go into disaster response.
Africa, the mysterious continent, or as some would say, the continent of dreams and exotic beauty, a continent which was famous for centuries to adventurers, slave traders, fortune seekers, and explorers. These and their likes, with the indigenous Africans, made Africa what it is today. The effects of climate change on the environment are every day changing and becoming a more dangerous threat to the ecosystem. The Zambia Institute of the Environmental Management says climate change should be regarded as a serious challenge to socio-economic development and human survival. Climate change requires high level of government interventions, and therefore policy making in this regard is a matter of urgency. Also, climate change adaptations and strategies should be streamlined in all developmental sectors to give the country direction and focus on climate change issues, and this should be coupled with action plans for citizenry participation in all climate change activities.
Trees are a major role in agriculture because when we look at trees have effects of capturing the carbon from the air, because most of the activities that we do tends to emit most of the carbon out there, and if there is nothing to capture that carbon, this is a situation where we start experiencing cases where it warms up even when it's not the time to do the warm up.
With these environmental changes, I think organic farming is one of the things that is helpful because it doesn't destroy your soil. So you won't concentrate much on how you're going to improve your soil or how you're going to protect your land from being unfertile. So if you use organic farming, it means you are improving your land year after year.
The causes of global warming, as we call it global warming, the causes generally are global. The main causes are the emissions of the greenhouse gases. And the three most important greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, which account for almost close to 100% of the global warming. Now, the sources of these greenhouse gases are mainly the burning of the fossil fuel. When we use petroleum, when we use coal, petroleum, coal, and gas, these three energy resources, they are called the fossil fuels. So when we burn petroleum in our transportation, in our heating and cooling of building, and otherwise, when we burn coal for production of energy and for other uses, we release some of these greenhouse gases into the environment. Once these gases go into the atmosphere, they serve as a sort of blanket. They let the sun rays come in, but the infrared or heating rays emanating from the earth is not able to go out into the space, but is sent back by this blanket.
As the name Africa suggests, Afa, Africa, Africus, meaning dust, sunny, without cold or south wind, Such are the conditions of natural life. This already shows that heat and dryness are a part of her. Zambia, a country in Africa, has not been spared when it comes to the harsh conditions of the climate in this continent. In fact, like any other nation, the effects of climate change are beginning to take effect.
We are seeing changes in the rainfall pattern, and we are seeing quite a lot of warming. While the globe has warmed by about 0.8 degrees centigrade in the last 150 years, the warming over Zambia is nearly 2 times in the last 50 years, which is about 1.5 degree to 2 degrees centigrade in the last 50 years. Similarly, on the rainfall, there have been many changes. Erratic rainfall patterns, sometimes the rain comes all of a sudden, the growing season becoming shorter, and so on. And all these things have a lot of implications on various economic sectors of Zambia.
The floods are most complicated. The drought issue could be handled by putting interventions such as construction of dams for storage of water, which in the event of serious droughts, people at least could access the facility and to continue with their crop husbandry by irrigating their crops.
Africa is the world's second largest and second most populous continent after Asia. At about 30.2 million square kilometers, it covers 6% of the Earth's total surface area and 20.4% of the total land area. With 1 billion people divided into 64 independent states, it accounts for about 14.72% of the world's human population. Africa is a continent that has been considered a dark continent not only because of the color of the skin of its majority inhabitants, but also because of the lack of a better word for the lifestyle of the majority of its population. Her past the mountains of challenges she has to go through, showing her resilience to all odds and joys that come upon her.
Zambia has got enormous forestry resources which play 2 roles. One, it is a carbon stocking. It sequestrates carbon, which contribute to reduce climate change effects. At the same time, you have a majority of people who rely on forestry for their livelihoods, but we are losing trees every year.
The Zambian people are also to blame, as they also contribute to the degradation of her beauty. The cutting down of trees for charcoal burning, farming purposes, burning bushes and waste, all this contributes to her rapid change in the rainfall pattern. The cause is not only global warming, but specifically our own neglect of nature.
You find plenty of charcoal. Well, where does charcoal come from? It's from trees being chopped down and then processed, burnt, and we produce charcoal. But the destruction that remains behind is frightening. But we should be conscious also that even as we cry about the charcoal, those people are getting something to eat with charcoal. Now, how do we replace that? These are the challenges we face.
The results are Africa's disasters, such as droughts that bring about famine, change in weather patterns, and many others.
The structure of reconstruction must involve kids, because the future is their future we're talking about. Let it be part and parcel of this. Let us take this message to all our people.
Zambia is part of the Central Sub-Saharan Africa, a nation that in the past 30 years has increased her population by approximately 300% and so reached over 13 million in 2011. Zambia, with her rich natural resources of minerals, abundant water, and most conducive tropical climate, may be called a paradise of Africa. Her major rivers such as Zambezi, Kafue, Luangwa, Kabompo, with many more tens of thousands more creeks and rivers that have their sources in underground water and dampos, hold enough water to feed a number of rivers and streams. These waters are sustaining natural human, animal, and vegetation life. Because of a high plateau position of about 900 to 1,500 meters above sea level, Zambia had usually enough rains to fuel the levels of the underground waters as well as river basins that last up to the next rainy season. The annual temperature in Zambia has increased by 1.3 degrees since 1960, a rate of change which is confidently projected to continue. This has an effect of increasing the frequency of days and nights which are particularly warm, a change which constrains crop yields in tropical latitudes. Look at her most beautiful national parks, and in the south, look at Zambia's most glamorous falls. There are over 20 major falls in Zambia. Among them is the most known Bosotonia Falls, the smoke that thunders, or as named by David Livingstone, Victoria Falls. Enjoy the heavenly beauty of Zambia's falling waters. But this heavenly beauty of Zambia is slowly fading and changing into a purgatory of degradation. Majority of the population is becoming poorer, while minority political clique is getting richer with exports of nearly 1 million tons of copper every year. With all the efforts being made, the question we now need to ask ourselves is, are the efforts enough, and are they serving their purpose?
The investor pre-finances the cost of the cook stove, because this is a 10-year project to make it accessible to lower income households. And the reason they do this is because they benefit from the carbon credits that are generated through the reduction in CO2 emissions. The households, in turn, sign a contract which commits them to being monitored on their use of twigs to confirm that they indeed have stopped using charcoal. Amongst the households that have given us feedback, where they were using 2-3 bags of charcoal, which was costing them maybe 140,000 kwacha a month, they're now just using two bags of twigs. So they're spending 24,000 kwacha where they were spending 140. We're getting most of our twigs from Chongwe area. This is mostly waste wood. For the bigger stage, we're going into plantation development to make sure that we have an energy supply for our stove.
We have been supporting climate resilient production methods or conservation farming through a very good relationship with the Zambia National Farmers Union and also the Ministry of Agriculture. And as we speak now, I think more than 150,000 small-scale farmers are now using conservation methods. They need less rain and they need less fertilizer to get the same produce. So I think this is very important.
It is therefore becoming increasingly important to meet the needs of individuals to understand these problems and potential solutions through the spread of environmental education.
We're pleased to say that in collaboration with a range of cooperating partners, we have been working to support the government and people of Zambia in dealing with climate change. For example, we worked with the government to establish a climate change facilitation unit. The role of that unit is really to help to develop the vision the government has, which is to come up with a national strategy and which will deal with climate change issues from a multidimensional perspective. The importance of bringing in indigenous knowledge is crucial because we know the farmers, for example, are experiencing climate change. They may not explain it in the same semantics as we're using, but they know, when there are irregularity of rain, when the crops are not yielding as much as they did in the past. So that level of indigenous knowledge needs to be brought into the climate change discourse.
So as the youths, I think we have to ensure that we try by all means to mobilize ourselves in such a way that we try to work for nature, because it will be us that will be able to suffer in the next years to come. So we need to start building our nature for our own benefit and even for the benefit of those that are coming behind us.
There is need to develop a more extensive and effective environmental strategy to better prepare the public to understand and take action regarding current and future environmental issues. The fight against climate change and environmental degradation is not one an individual country can win alone or an individual citizen. It's a fight that calls for everyone's cooperation. It should start with individuals, make it a personal conviction, then it should go to social groups, institutions, organizations, ministries, countries, international organizations, and then the whole world as a whole. When we realize that it's everyone's fight, then we will be a step closer to winning the fight against climate change.